Hello, this is going to be a short demo video showing off the ComfyUI provider, which is a specific provider built for a slightly more general provider DAO and provider DAO rollup. So you can find the repos all from Nick Ludwig ComfyUI provider repo. It has the links to the other repos that you're going to need, and it also has the instructions that we're going to be following in this video. So there's three components, four components really. There's three Keynode components. There's the rollup that tells everybody what the state of the DAO is. So specifically the things that we're interested in right now are the router, and that is one of the other components, and then also the providers. There is only one router right now, although it could be generalized to have multiple routers, and there is could be many providers. So the external component to the system is ComfyUI, which is a server where you can set up a stable diffusion workflow. So Holium has set up a stable diffusion workflow on some servers. And so what I'm going to be showing you is setting up a provider DAO rollup, a provider DAO router, and a ComfyUI provider. So these components are going to be routing requests through Keynode to ComfyUI and then writing the result to disk in Keynode. And the idea is that this will be used for a queuing system. So as more GPUs become available, for example, so that more ComfyUI instances can be run, jobs come into the router. It puts them into a queue if nobody's ready. If people are ready, if people being providers, then it will send them over to the provider. So you're going to have one provider standing in front of each ComfyUI instance. And this is kind of a way to just rate balance and also scale up as more GPUs or more traffic comes online. All right, so that's enough talking. Let's do some demonstrating. So in the README here, there's also setup instructions. So we already have the repos, but I'll show you installing stuff. So, okay, so we need to install the rollup. So here I'm going to run the rollup and the router both on this node on the left, which is nickludwig.os. So how do we install the rollup? We do kit bs. So let's see, where's my repo? Okay, here's my repo, provider DAO rollup. So we're going to do kit bs. In this case, Nick Ludwig is running at 8080. So we build, and that is incorrect. We need to go to the sequencer. Okay, so we go to the sequencer, and then we do kit bs. Okay, so we have started up the provider DAO sequencer. Okay, now we need to install the router. So we are going to do another kit bs in the router. So here's the router repo, kit bs. This is also to 8080, so Nick Ludwig. Okay, here we go. All right, we have the provider DAO router running. Then we need to install the provider. So we are going to also kit bs this one. This one's running over here on 8081. So kit bs-p 8081, and that will build it and install it over here. Okay, great. So what do we do next? Okay, now we're going to have to, let me make this so you can see it. We have to put a workflow. So ComfyUI uses these things called workflows. These are like telling, right, so ComfyUI is not just running Stable Diffusion, it's running a pipeline of different things as well. So you define that pipeline with a JSON file called a workflow, and so we are going to create a directory in our ComfyUI provider VFS, and then we are going to copy this pepe.json, which lives in this ComfyUI repo, into our VFS directory. And I've already done that, so I'm not going to show that step. But imagine that we just did that. Okay. So now we have our workflow in place. You can have multiple workflows here. and workflows are defined when you send your request. So just kind of skipping ahead, but if you look at example usage here, we define a workflow Pepe. So that looks for pepe.json. Okay, so how do we actually set these things up? So we have to set certain state for these to work properly. So we need to set up our rollup, our router, and our provider. So setting up the rollup. Okay, so we need to set who the routers are and who the members are. The routers, there's only going to be one in this case. And in this case, there's also going to be one provider, but you could have multiple providers. So I'm going to copy for my specific system from a different screen. So we're going to set for the provider.rollup rollup our routers to this same node, Nick Ludwig OS. Set members, these are the providers, to this other node, Yael Solutions. Okay, and then we can actually query and see that this is set properly. So this is a script, just does a read on the rollup state. So here we can check the members as we expect, Yael Solutions, and then we can do routers as well. Okay, and then the other thing we can do is this state is persisted. So if we bring the node down, bring it back online, then we can do that same read and see that, okay, yeah, it's persisted. Cool. So we only have to do this once, and then we can move the node to another machine, for example, and it will still work. Okay, now we need to set up the router. So similarly, we need to set two things here. So we need to basically say, where do we find the rollup, and where do we find the, or what's the provider that we're routing to? What's the process name for the provider? So if I'm gonna copy those same things from my other screen here. So we're just saying set the provider process to this ComfyUI process. So this router software is made to be in principle reasonably general, so that you could plug in different providers here without having to modify the router software. Okay, and then we set the rollup sequencer. So this one is an address, not just a process ID. So you're going to have to make sure that you plug in the proper rollup node here. Okay. Once again, the state is persisted. So if we bring down this node and bring it back online, all these things will be persisted. We're going to do the same thing for the provider over here on the other node. So I'm just going to breeze through that. So we're setting the router process. So who's going to be talking to us, who's the correct router to listen to. Set the rollup sequencer as well. And then we set a parameter is ready. So the way that the router knows who to send jobs to is who has declared that they are ready. So we are declaring we are ready. This state is persisted, so if we bring down this node and bring it back online on a different machine or on this machine, it will still work. Okay, cool. So we've done all the setup. That's a lot of setup. Now let's get to the fun part. We can send, and this could be from a different machine or a different node or a different machine entirely, but for the purposes of this, we'll just send it from one of these nodes since we've got them up and running. So we can send a run job request. Here, this is workflow Pepe, so it'll be a Pepe, and then let's see, we can change this prompt. Let's see if we can think of something creative on the fly. How about Old West wearing a cowboy hat and toting a revolver. Okay. So now what's going to happen here is this run job is targeted at the router. So this run job is going to get sent to the over here to the router. So if you're imagining the full flow, you would actually go and ask the rollup, hey, who are the routers? In this case, I'm kind of glossing over that because I'm just sending it with this message script. But I'm sending this to this router. Oh, I need to actually specify this router. Okay. Okay. So I'm sending it to this router. And then the request is that I should run this job with this workflow and this prompt. And so what's going to happen here is the router over here is going to say, well, I'll talk it through while it's running. So what's going to happen is the router over here is going to receive the request. It's going to bounce it back over here and to the provider. The provider is going to send it off to ComfyUI, and when it gets it back, it's going to send it over here, and then we get a job complete. Okay, so let's look in our directory. All right, here's our Pepe. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That looks exactly like what we requested. So everything worked, and yeah, now it's just a matter of, you know, dotting I's and crossing T's. But we've got the basic framework for provider DAOs up and running.